Quickly on salaries, you've mentioned that salaries you feel are too high at this point. If you're elected, would you cut salaries for elected officials, and if so,
I would ask them to do that. Yes, and let's put it this way: there are 13 Class 1 counties. Which one has the highest salaries?
I would assume you're talking about Boone County.
That is exactly correct, and it's amazing. If you take a look at our contemporaries, the one that probably stacks up best against us would be Clay County over in Kansas City. Clay County is about 50% bigger. They have all the same problems that we have. They're just slightly bigger. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, well, how are all the elected officials over in Clay County paid? Well, we pay our elected officials 60% more than they get paid over in that county for similar work. We pay our county officials more than any of the officials in Greene County, which is 2 to 3 times the size of Boone County. And so if you look across the state, it's 50% more. If you look at counties like Callaway, or you look at counties like Camden, or you look at counties like Cole, all of which are Class 1 counties. So all I'm saying is that through an interesting process that has occurred over the last 15 to 20 years, and by the way, the elected officials of Boone County determine their raises. There's a thing called the County Salary Commission, which is comprised of all 12 elected officials plus one other person to make it an odd number, and that other person is the medical examiner or the coroner, depending on what kind of county it is. So they decide on their own raises, and they have voted themselves a raise almost every single time they've had the opportunity to do so over the past 20 years, and that's the reason that this county has achieved its status as number 1 in the state of Class 1 counties when it comes to the pay of our elected officials. And I don't think it's justified.
Mm-hmm. You think about potential reasons they might have done that, things like cost of living that have gone up?
Well, that's what they've done. They've taken every single cost of living adjustment possible, and they built it into their wage structure. Mm-hmm. But they also pay everybody exactly the same. And if you look at all the other counties, usually the commissioners are paid less than some of the other individuals. The sheriff and the prosecuting attorney they're on a different pay scale. But the auditor, the county clerk, the recorder of deeds, the collector, the assessor, there's not this consistent, everybody gets paid exactly the same mentality that we have adopted here in Boone County. And obviously, if you would take those jobs and you would send them out to be reviewed by consultants that do that sort of thing, they would obviously come to the conclusion that all those jobs need to be paid at the same level. And the other discussion that comes up is whether or not all these jobs are full-time or part-time. Well, by state statute, we know they're part-time. And obviously, some jobs are more part-time or more full-time than others, but we pay every elected official the same $82,000 plus except for 3. That's the presiding commissioner who gets $2,000 more bonus, and the sheriff and the prosecuting attorney who get paid more. And all I'm saying is that we need to have, in the process of setting up a charter which is the other issue that I want to bring forward in terms of this, is that we need to have a citizen review panel look at those salaries. Some of them may be too high, and some of them may be too low. But there's no reason that all of them should be the same. I guarantee you that. I mean, that's just, that was done on purpose.
Well, there is the point that I think we've been dancing around, is that this is a Democratic institution in a lot of ways, big D Democrat in terms of the party. It's been controlled by Democratic officials for many years at this point. And I mean, you read Hank Waters' editorial, and I mean, Hank Waters' editorial is Hank Waters' editorial in many ways. But it also makes an interesting point. Like, yes, this is a Democratic cabal, but essentially, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, how do you know it's not broke?
That's what he's saying.
Well, he asked me the question. He said, do you know of anybody that's any county official that's not doing a good job? I said, no. I said, thankfully, we have very good elected officials here. And I'm not saying anything about the performance of any of them. I'm simply saying I believe, and many other people in the county believe, that we overpay some of them.
Mm-hmm. I want to let me ask you about the charter form of government. Just explain kind of in brief what that means and why you think that change is necessary at this point.
Well, unless you have a charter form of government in Missouri at the county level, in essence, what you've done is abdicate all of the decision-making to the state legislature. All of the rules and regulations by which the county works is determined by the state legislature through statute. So, for instance, if we wanted to, well, a classic example, I was able to get Chapter 100 bonds for the county. Now, the process of doing that, if we were a charter county, the county could have said, okay, we're going to do Chapter 100 bonds. Done, period. We give ourselves the authority to do that. Now, the alternative is if you're not a charter county, then you have to introduce a bill in the legislature that says, okay, we're going to carve out a special exemption for Boone County. You have to get that through the House, and at the same time, you have to get it through the Senate. Then you have to hope that both bodies pass a similar version or a bill that has that provision in it, and then it goes to the governor for a signature. Now, you don't have any control over that process. That thing can die at any single point along the line. I mean, and it can die in either house. The governor can refuse to sign it. And typically, since no one cares about the change except people in Boone County, you're not going to get any support from the other 113 counties of the city of St. Louis. I mean, they don't care. They don't. Why should they care about something that only applies to Boone County? So, to the extent that we can take control of our own destiny, and that's exactly what passing a charter means, or adopting a charter form of government, then we don't have to go to the state legislature to get permission to do any single thing we want. And for instance, this last year, Ashland wanted to be able to pass a hotel tax. They had to get permission from the state legislature and the state senate in order to do that. And if they were a charter city, they wouldn't have had to do that. So, it's just, in essence, that's how it all works. And so the question is, do we want to be able to control our own destiny, our own future? Do we want to be able to make decisions without having to ask permission every single time? And if the answer to that is yes at some point, then we need to adopt a charter form of government. Now, in the past, this has been tried twice before, and unfortunately, we get people who have these grandiose ideas about, well, as long as we're at it, let's change everything. Well, a lot of people don't want to see a lot of changes, but I think they would support some very simple ones, like increasing the number of commissioners from 3 to 5. That just increases representation. And you want to think about this historically. We have the same number of commissioners now as we did 100 years ago. Well, the county is a lot bigger than it was 100 years ago. And so your ability as a citizen to actually know who your representative is in the county government and be able to reach out and touch them is diminished because now each of the 2 associate commissioners are representing 75,000 people, and the presiding commissioner is representing 150,000. And if you go back just 50 years, it was less than half of that in both cases. And the same, if you think about this in terms of, we have 3 county commissioners for 150,000. How many city councilmen do we have?
We have, I think, 7.
And how many?
Not 7.
How many members of the House? We've got 4 and 5 members of the House.
Yeah. Okay,
so it's a lot easier to know your state representative probably than it is to know who your county commissioner is. So that's all I'm saying. And yet 2 things: increase the you move the legal authority from the state to the county officials. Okay, that's step 1. And you increase the number of commissioners from 3 to 5, and that solves a little problem about quorums. Now, a quorum is just 2 commissioners represent a quorum, for Pete's sake. And if one of them happens to be the presiding commissioner, the presiding commissioner, in essence, becomes a dictator because their vote counts more than either of the associates. And the other thing is then you go through and you fix the pay scale. And that's all you would have to do in step 1. And then as we move on down the road and we see that there's some other problems, or we want to look at the possibility of perhaps consolidating offices or moving an elected office to an appointed one, that's entirely up to the citizens of the county, and they can do that any time in the future.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, you caught me off guard with the civics lesson, the city council 6 plus the at-large vote. That's where 7 comes from. There you go. So,
yeah, because
so
you always need
crazy.
you always need an odd number.
Yeah, exactly. All right, move on from structural questions to kind of governing questions. Biggest one being development. In the news recently, we've heard a lot about the East Area Plan, something that would essentially limit commercial development to specific areas, infrastructure already in place, and then basically opening up much of the East Area to residential development. Tell me what your feelings are about the East Area Plan. I know that your opponent is kind of a wait and see on it. What do you think?
Well, you mean we have the East and I guess what is called the Northeast? We have the two. The Northeast one is up by...
Well, the East Area Plan, I mention it because it came up at the city council meeting, I think 2 weeks or a week ago, I think it was.
That's basically that's the Stadium Boulevard connection out to the
stadium, and then everything south of 70, east of 63.
Right, and then the Northeast one is where the new high school is and all that up on the other side. And those are two joint city-county planning and zoning, basic cooperative efforts. And the question really is, okay, is the process, well, obviously the process is well thought out because it's been looked at and hammered on now for over a year in terms of each one of the two, and it's a matter of compromises. And you have to ask yourself, though, you get a lot of people who want to live in those areas, and I have this little concern about what Boone County really is. And what is Boone County the agricultural sort of quasi-rural county that it was 20 years ago? And the answer is probably no. It's becoming much more consolidated, cosmopolitan, residential, much more developed than counties like Howard County or Montauk County or Randolph County and many of the counties around us, or even Audrain County. So, I get this. I'm always interested when I hear this discussion about, well, we need to keep this country flavor. I'm going, okay. Well, the county is now at 150,000, okay, and probably in the next 10 years, given historic sort of trends, we'll probably pick up another maybe 50,000 people. And it's going to be very difficult in the long term to maintain that rural agrarian feel, okay, in an area that is going to develop, I think, as rapidly as Boone County is going to develop.
So then that brings up questions of how do you develop the more, I guess, developed areas. I mean, there's been a lot of concerns about a lack of business development and a lack of kind of constrictive county policies actually on that as it regards to things like stormwater and a lot of zoning
stream
policies.
Buffers, right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, where do you feel that the county should be going on that? Do you think that they've gone too far in one direction?
I have some problems with the stream buffer ordinance, for example. Depending on what class of stream it is, whether it's I think it's an A, B, or a C, or a 1, 2, 3. I think it's an A, B, C. But on A stream, which is a real stream, okay, the setback is 100 feet. So in essence, what you're saying is, okay, we have 200 feet of private property on 100 feet on each side of the stream that can no longer be developed. Well, if you look, you see, you only need about 230 feet of running stream length times that 200 to take out an acre. Now, an acre is worth, at a minimum, probably $10,000. So every time you take out an acre out of the potential development, we have taken $10,000 from the property owner. And we wouldn't allow that in terms of an eminent domain decision unless we paid them some money for it. But in essence, what we've done is take property through the planning and zoning process in the same manner as if we would have simply gone in and taken it directly. And so I have some issues about that. I think we need to take a hard look at that and make sure that any type of restriction like that has a large enough benefit to the community to make that worthwhile. And if that's the case, perhaps we need to start looking at ways to reimburse landowners for taking their property, in essence, which is what we're doing in some of these with some of these statutes.